Hello everybody, welcome to this video blog. This is a lecture I recently gave to an Oxford University course, and I thought I would record the thoughts for my usual blog audience, so here goes. My theme here is how Agile is evolving, and for context, I'm going to take the evolution I've been going through from Xanpan, which I published in 2015, and actually started life a few years before that, to the way my thinking moved on to OKRs, and I'll hint at where it's going next. I think before we get too far in, though, I want to address this question, which is on social media at the moment: is Agile dead? And basically the answer is no. Agile is everywhere. Agile has gone mainstream. Certainly the Agile practices have gone mainstream. Teams are doing stand-up meetings and planning meetings and sprints and using tools like Jira, sometimes even doing test-driven development. Agile is all around us. The Agile hype is less. The Agile change and Agile mania perhaps is less. I think that's perhaps because the cycle's moved on to artificial intelligence, but Agile has arrived. For better or worse, it's here. Unfortunately, the Agile we have isn't quite the Agile myself and many others were dreaming of a few years ago when Agile appeared. We have an Agile which is better than things were, but not quite the Agile we hoped for. There's still more we could do. So the other thing we need to define is just what is Agile. I mean, I already hinted at when I was about Agile practices. There's the Agile model, the way we think about work. I think that's immensely valuable. And I think that is something that has sunk in. We haven't completely seen the end of that yet. And then we've got the Agile methods. When you look at the Agile methods, they all symbolize an idea which was prevalent beforehand. So extreme programming, a lot of that comes from the quality movement. The things that are coming out of Philip Crosby and W. Edwards Deming and other people about if we improve quality, we get a better product at the end. There's more to XP than just a quality movement, but that is perhaps the big message in XP. And that is closely related to lean. Lean manufacturing, Toyota, which has given us the Kanban method. For me, lean thinking, the ideas behind lean, underlie a lot of what is in the Agile movement. If you look at Scrum's big thing there is socio-technical systems, self-organizing teams, the type of stuff that Eric Trisk identified in the 1940s, things that General Foods was experimenting with at Topeka in the 1970s. Those ideas have been around for a while, and Scrum updated them and brought them into the world of software development. Mustn't forget my own entry in here, Xanpan. I would say Xanpan is rooted in organizational learning and the ideas of Peter Senge, and that is closely related to socio-technical systems, and it's part of lean as well. We could carry on. I could put Tom Gilb's Evo method in here, which I think owes a big debt to Stafford Beer and management cybernetics. The thing is, all of these ideas, management cybernetics, socio-technical systems, quality, were around before Agile, and they will continue to be around after Agile. And good companies and good managers will incorporate these kind of ideas, and maybe they'll come back in a mass fashion again. But for now, Agile mania is over. For me, Agile has always been about learning. Underneath all these methods is a need to learn and to put that learning into action, not just once, but again and again and again. Agile is also a motivating story for people. Agile paints a very nice picture of the way we could live in a better world with more engaged workers, more satisfying work, better results, and all the rest of it. And that's a very powerful motivator for people. So Agile is also about that story. We've perhaps lost that a little bit as Agile's become more associated with management. And finally, Agile is a process change that goes with digital tools and maximizes the benefits. what we see with technology again and again is that first you use new tools, new technology to do the same job faster, perhaps better, perhaps cheaper, and then over time you change your processes so you can maximize your benefits from the tools. Talk about this in a moment. And Agile is that process change that goes with digital tools. And therefore, Agile has a place in our AI future because AI, it has the same attributes that AI is a digital tool, and the attributes of AI and digital tools are the same. So if we think about what is driving our evolution, why we need to evolve Agile, Agile itself, we've already hinted at the learning culture, Kaizen as we call it in Lean. We have some successes in Agile and we have some failures in Agile. And I'll include the failure of the backlog. Backlogs have failed. We need to think about that. So Agile is a motivator for change itself, and also go to socio-technical systems, the self-organizing teams. They say we should be learning and changing. Agile itself, when you're success with Agile teams get frustrated because of the environment they're in, because of the governance systems, because of the project model. And when some teams are successful, other teams who are related, they want to do similar things. So Agile itself is an agitator for change. And finally, as already hinted at, the technology around us, specifically AI, continues to change, so we need to keep evolving and updating. I like to say the only thing you can do wrong in Agile is do the same thing you just did 3 months ago. You should always be trying something new, you should be trying to improve. Hope for those improvement attempts will actually be improvements. If not, roll back, try something else. If you're not changing, you're static, and static is not Agile. The only thing you can do wrong in Agile is to do things the same as you have. Agile is about learning and acting on that learning. All Agile initiatives are flawed. It is because we are doing Agile that we are Agile. As we see our flaws and we attempt to improve them, we get better. Right, let's look at an earlier technology change. Let's look at the introduction of electricity. This is a picture from a factory sometime in the 1920s. What's interesting about this picture is it illustrates 2 generations of factory technology here. In the main part of the picture, you see there's a man there standing at some kind of press with a giant spring on it. And if you notice, it's connected by a belt to a turning system at the top. In the earliest factories, the energy for the factory came from rotation. It came from water wheels. Maybe it came from steam engines. The main thing was your energy source was actual motion. So your machines in the factory had to be physically connected to the source of motion, and you needed to transmit the motion, which meant you had these great big bus bars. If you look at the top there, that long steel rod running through the factory, that is where the energy was. And you connected to those rods through some kind of band, in this case, turning wheels and turning belts. And that's how you organize your machines. Your machines all had to be positioned to be close to that bar. Your machines had to be capable of working in such a way that they didn't stop the bar. Okay? And that dictated certain things about the way you designed your factory, the way you laid out your factory, and the processes you used within your factory. So you end up with long, thin factories. And the machines weren't mobile, so you had to ensure the pieces moved between the machines. Okay. That's how that energy technology dictated our processes and physical buildings. Now, in the foreground of this picture, you've got a man with an electric hand tool, which at the time of this picture was kind of new. If you look there, he's got a lot more mobility. He can move around with that hand tool because he's got a wire connecting it. And while he can't be too far from the socket, he's got some flexibility. And he can do a different type of work in a different way. As electricity came in, as machines became electric, you got new flexibility. And the first thing you did with it was to do the same thing, but faster, perhaps cheaper and better. Electric machines just swapped in for the old mechanical machines. Okay. Over time, We learned that because we weren't restricted by our machines, we could work in different ways. We could change the processes. And over time, we learned that actually we could now design our factories in a different fashion. Because our factories are no longer restrained by being long and thin to get that motion from the bar, you could arrange the work differently, and that could give you greater efficiencies. New technology led to new designs and new processes, and we see this again and again with our technologies. In the last 50 years, we've experienced a technology change as we moved from the vacuum tubes that computers were using in 1960 to the 1970s when we started to get integrated circuits, silicon chips entering the system. We got a greater density of silicon chips, and we moved from the early silicon chips, which might have a few hundred or couple of thousand transistors on them, to a Raspberry Pi, which has billions. That's a 2016 Raspberry Pi. It's not even an up-to-date one. Our technology changed. We didn't just get information technology, we got an abundance of it. And like with electricity, that leads to process change. So back in 1970, we had this waterfall model. Our projects were based on this waterfall model, which may or may not have been valid, but that's how we conceptualized our work. By the time we get to 2016, 2026, we're thinking more of sprints. We're thinking of short feedback cycles. We changed our processes because our technology changed. And we're going to see the same thing playing out again. As our technology changes, as we move into a GPU type world, we're going to change our processes. Now, maybe our agile processes will take us a long way in the AI world because it's all digital and we've already made some of those changes. Maybe we're going to have to think about some different process changes. Maybe within the agile framework we need to change how we work. There are some things though I think we can already tell. One is that in the AI world we still have human intelligence. In many ways, human intelligence becomes more important because we have artificial intelligence. Because artificial intelligence drives down the price of basic repetitive thinking. The aspects where we need human intelligence, more cognitive, more complex, where we need more conversations, more empathy perhaps, there's still going to be a role for that. I'd also argue that we want more autonomy with our workers. We still want to push authority down our hierarchy so the people doing the work can make decisions. If we automate our systems and we have machines making lots of decisions, the decisions that are left over, we want people to be able to make. We don't want people to then have to check with their boss, who checks with their boss, who checks with their boss. And that we get a very slow, laborious set of decisions. And we've seen this again and again with technology, that we want to give more power to the people doing the work. And also, when it comes to things like coding and conceptualizing problems, we're going to be able to work at a higher abstraction layer. We no longer need to think about bit twiddling a lot of the time. We can think at the ERP level. And perhaps AI is going to allow us to think at an even higher abstraction layer. So that's some of the elements they change. And we want our agile processes to include this because agile is about learning and changing and improving. If I can just take us back in time a little bit to 2015, I published this book, Xanpan. And the secret of Xanpan is it contains XP. It's my entry in the agile method state. In Xanpan, I combine Kanban style flow working with extreme programming, engineering practices and iterations. I've had some great success with Xanpan. And some people have taken Xanpan and they have applied it. However, my purpose in writing the book was not to create another agile method for you to choose from. By all means, do so if you want, but What I was trying to illustrate was that you can create your own methodology, and you should look at the different methodologies on offer, the different tools, the techniques, and you should create one that works for your team. This was mine. That was 2015. A few years later, while we were in lockdown, this French conference, Frug&Agile, came to me and said, can you deliver us a Xanpan presentation? We like it, we've seen it. I said, well, yes, but the world has moved on since 2015, and if I take my own medicine, I have to change something, which got me thinking. The challenge now was, if I really believe the only thing you can do wrong is do things the same as you did 3 months ago, what would I change about Xanpan? And that was the challenge I posed myself. And it caused me in 2021 to think about what I would do different. And it didn't take me very long, because I had some experience here already. It didn't take me very long to home in on the backlog, the bottomless pit that is today the backlog. Most teams today have a runaway backlog. They may have hundreds, if not thousands of stories. The chances of being done in the next year, let alone the next 3 months, are remote. The truth is, backlogs have become broken. Too many teams are slaving away under the tyranny of the backlog. It's great to have lots of small stories. Small stories are a very efficient way of working. But that also opens the door to inefficient management. It leads to micromanagement. It leads to ceremony hell, where in addition to our planning meetings, we need grooming meetings, refinement meetings, and power of 3 meetings, and maybe some more meetings we haven't heard of. And that means our calendar becomes complicated with meetings, and when do they happen, and which stories have been groomed and which stories have been refined. We have these runaway backlogs that leads to a focus on velocity. Are we there yet? It's like having kids in the back seat. Are we there yet? How many stories have we done? How many story points have we done? When do you forecast the end? And we're caught up in how much of the backlog we've done. As a result, our teams are losing autonomy because they're slaving away trying to deliver this undeliverable backlog. In effect, we've returned to the ideas of big upfront working, that we can write down everything we may want to do, and we just have to do what we said we were going to do. The backlogs are broken. My solution to this is quite simple. We need to nuke the backlog, dispense with it, throw it away. You have nothing to lose but your burn down charts. Once your backlog has gone away, you need something to put in its place. I suggest at this point, this is where we can involve objectives and key results, OKRs. The way I've been working with teams in recent years is to drive the work with OKRs, our objective and key results, the objective, the outcome we wish to achieve, and the key results, how we're going to measure that. I wish we could rename objectives and key results to be outcomes and acceptance criteria, because that's what they are. People sometimes struggle with the term key result. They think key results are some kind of work breakdown. They are minor tasks that build towards the objective. They're not. They're mostly acceptance criteria. When we realize the objective, when we have met our goal, we can measure the difference by looking at our key results. They are acceptance criteria. We don't stop working until we've passed them. Once you think of objectives and key results as outcomes and acceptance criteria, you see that OKRs fit right in there with test-driven development, test-first development, acceptance test-driven development, and behavior-driven development. They are, in effect, test-first management. We are stating what we want to bring about, the objective, the outcome, and we are saying how we are going to measure that as a key result, as our acceptance criteria. If OKRs did not exist before Agile, the Agile community would have needed to invent them. We're advancing the test first ideas. So it flows from what I've been saying, that we're talking about objectives over backlogs. We treat our objectives as our story generators. Every time we want to know what should we do next, we return to the objective and we say, given where we are today, given the objective we want to meet, what do we need to do to advance on that objective? And we route out any stories we need to do to make that advancement. We refine them there and then. We set acceptance criteria there and then. So this is the OKR framework: objectives and key results, outcome you want to bring about, acceptance criteria, and you keep on asking, what do we need to do to move closer to our objective? There are some people who see OKRs as a way of reintroducing a command and control atmosphere. However, I see OKRs as a way of enhancing team autonomy, of allowing teams to make more decisions themselves, allowing teams to set their own goals. And the way it works is something like this. We have our senior leadership, and they talk about the destination, the higher purpose, the ultimate goals for the organization, all those big important stuff. And they think about company strategy, and they think about resourcing and all the rest of it. They paint a picture of a shining city on a hill that we all aspire to be, that destination, and they get people enthused. But rather than the leadership team then telling people what to do, they ask for help. The leadership team deliberately leave white space between the destination they want to head for and the teams. The teams listen to what the executives are saying, and they listen to a lot of other sources of information. The teams often know more about the environment than the leadership team. So the teams are responsible for creating, development, maintaining our products. They hear what the leadership want to say, and they respond, and they say, this quarter, this is what we're going to achieve. This quarter, this is our objectives. And in doing this, we are creating a feedback loop. There's our exec talking about the big things, the bigger purposes, the North Star, the strategy, whatever you want to call it. And they feed that into the team. And the team come along, and the team have other sources of information. The team hear from customers. They may hear customer feedback directly. They may hear from the commercial team who are selling to customers. They may hear from a support desk who are receiving customer issues and problems. All that information is going into the engineering team. They are also hearing from their peers, other teams they work with, teams that may use their products or they may depend on. And they're hearing from competitors. They are seeing what the competitors do with their products. All this information is coming into our main team for the product. And finally, this engineering team also know about the technology. They know both about the technology the product is built with. They know what that technology is capable of. They know where that technology has problems. They know where that product and that technology needs care and attention. The team are also aware of the other technologies that are out there that they could use. They are aware of the new technologies that might change the environment. Hopefully, all team members are doing a bit of this. But there's one role above and beyond the others that should be on top of this, and that is the product management role. The product manager needs to be thinking about all this information from customers, from peers, from competitors and technology, and putting it together to understand where the product is going and the product's own goals that are going to build towards the bigger company goals. So collectively, product manager and team produce the OKRs for the quarter, right? That's what the team is going to do. This is how the team in the next period are going to advance on the executive goals and satisfy all these other constraints. But this is not the end of the process. This is where we start to get feedback, because those goals the team is pursuing can be shown to your leaders and your more senior leaders, and they can talk about them. And they can ask questions of those goals, and they can feed that review back into the team, and the team can fine tune their OKRs and show them again, and we can go around this loop again and again. And in the process, the executive review is going to be feeding a little bit into the long-term picture. It may be nudging the ultimate company goals here or there. So it's all about building feedback loops. Now, goals exist inside goals. Every little goal we had contributes towards a bigger goal. And so it is with companies. Our teams use narrow and immediate goals, large about the next quarter, very specific. The organization as a whole has very broad goals which may last for years. The trick is to go from that very broad long-term goal down to the small and immediate things you can do now. So we set our quarterly OKRs for the here and now, and they contribute towards an annual goal, and they may contribute towards a product goal or a North Star, and that may contribute towards a company goal. All these goals nest within one another, and they should all be clearly building towards the next one up. And because we can write these down, and because we have a standard way of formulating them, we can compare them, we can put them next to each other, and we can say, does this goal actively work towards that goal? Too often in companies, people talk about goals, but the goals are not clearly defined, they're not specific, they're vague, they're passed around by word of mouth. And once we have all these goals, we can start building those feedback loops between the broad goals and the narrow ones, between the here and now goals and the annual goals and the North Stars and the company goals. And they feedback both up and down. How do the smaller goals contribute? Where do the smaller goals need to change? And it's not all one way. Sometimes leadership aren't aware of facts, which teams are. Sometimes leadership don't make themselves clear. Sometimes leadership don't mention something which turns out to be important. And equally, our engineering teams, our teams doing the work, sometimes they're not as clear as they should be. Sometimes they're not aware of some piece of information. There's all sorts of feedback that can happen in any direction. What we're really doing is building a strategy debugger at a very high level by being able to articulate these goals and be able to write them down and put them next to each other and find where they don't match. We can debug what's happening in the company and the strategy. Our goals and our strategy are met with an interpretation and response because the senior people set out their goals and the people elsewhere get to interpret them and respond to them. We've got independent action. We can start to see where things are different. We can see where there's an information mismatch. We can have conversations around that feedback. Maybe something is missing, maybe something is flawed, maybe something's misunderstood, maybe something's not executable. This is how we build our strategy debugger. So teams are setting small quarterly goals and they contribute to the bigger goals. Now this is all wrapped inside a super sprint. Typically, OKRs are set on a quarterly cycle, every 3 months, 12 weeks. At the end of that cycle, they are reset. This sounds a lot like a sprint. And within this period, within this super cycle, teams are sprinting the same as they ever did, or they're using Kanban or whatever method they choose to use. The teams I've been working with recently, we run 1 week sprints. We don't need much more because we've got the goals to direct us. But if you want 2 weeks, stick with 2 weeks. The cycle's all quite simple. We set our goals at the start. At the end, we synchronize with our clients, our customers, whoever. We close out, review our goals. How far did we get? Did we meet them? We hold a retrospective. And of course, we set new goals for the coming period. And during that period, every time we go into a sprint planning meeting, every time we go into a Kanban replenishment, every time we need to know what do we do next, we ask, what will move us closer to our objective? Thank you, everybody. I hope you all got something out of that. If you'd like to know more, please drop me a note. Better still, buy the book. QR code will take you straight to the book. Some of the ideas in this presentation have evolved a little bit beyond the book. Leave me a comment in the comment section below. Ask me a question. And please connect me on LinkedIn. If you'd like the slides, I know everybody always likes the slides, get over to my website, allankelly.net/evolution download, and you'll be able to get these slides there. Thank you very much.